Hi, this is Debbie, and today I wanted to look at how to make a shaker card. Shaker cards are all the rage at the moment. They really have that wow factor. Adults, children, everybody loves shaking a card. And to help with this, Simon Says Stamp have just brought out 4 new dies and a selection pack of rainbow coloured beads. The dies come as great iconic images such as a retro TV, a classic present, a fun gumball, and the clock. I live in Scotland, where New Year celebrations are steeped in tradition and otherwise known as Hogmanay. I wanted to use the clock as a unique invitation to our friends to join us to bring in the new year. So I made up the shaker card, and then I've left the back blank so I can write a note to invite our friends over. The clock shaker die comes with an outer frame to cut the clock shape, and then the inner circle to cut the shaker area, and inlaid within the inner circle are all the pieces to decorate the clock with. I got busy with a stack of die cuts with a view glitter cardstock, and I cut the clock pieces from various different colours. The outline of the clock is cut from the steel grey glitter card in the pack, and then the bells from the silver, the clock hands from the black, and I also cut some gold 2015 numbers using the simple numbers dies from Simon Says Stamp. I traced the outline of the clock onto some pattern paper, which I'd backed with an extra piece of card to give it sturdiness. And then I trimmed with scissors just slightly inside the line I'd just drawn. This gives a circle of pattern paper just slightly smaller than the outline of the clock, and then that will make it easy to line everything up when it comes to making the shaker card. To contain the beads within the shaker, you need some acetate. Today I'm using some old packaging, but I've also used in the past some overlay from an overhead projector. Having trimmed out the acetate using the pattern paper circle as a guide, I'm going to attach the acetate to the back of the clock outline. I'm using glossy accents as it's a very strong glue and you don't need much of it, and I don't want to add much because I don't want the glue to seep out onto the front and become visible on the front of the shaker. I'm using a couple of glue dots to keep the clock hands in place. Rather than having the hands exactly at 12 o'clock one over the other, I want them just slightly apart so it looks like it's almost 12 o'clock, and so I'm setting the hour hand straight up and the minute hand just approaching the 12. I'm cutting some 3M foam adhesive down into small strips and then adding those to the back of the clock around the outline. It's like laying a brick wall, I think, in a circle. Using little pieces, you can actually get the foam adhesive to follow the circle outline, and you want to make sure that there's no gaps because you don't want any beads escaping. I like the beads in the shaker to really be able to shake, and so I like to add a second layer of foam adhesive on top of the first layer. This gives the extra height between the back of the clock and the front of the clock and allows room for the beads to shake and move around. I'm tucking the little alarm off switch in behind the foam adhesive on the outline of the clock. I've used clear foam adhesive to attach the bells, and now a couple of small glue dots behind the hands of the clock to make sure that those aren't moved by the shaking beads when the shaker card is complete. And then this is the fun part. This is the bit that we all came to see. These are the selection pack of beads that have just been released by Simon Says Stamp. The main container has 24 smaller containers and they're packed with different rainbow coloured beads, and I've picked out 5 in traditional New Year's colours: the blacks, the silvers, the whites and the gold. I've added a selection of the colours, and I'm also going to pop in some of my final gorgeous sparkling sequins that came as part of the December card kit from Simon Says Stamp. They were a silver and gold mix as well. By tipping the shaker card slightly towards you, you can work out whether you've got sufficient beads, and I actually went back and added a few more because I wanted a nice deep layer. I've removed the backers from the foam adhesive and I'm marking where the clock hands are on the back of the pattern paper so that when I place the pattern paper onto the shaker, I know where to keep the 12 o'clock up at the top. As soon as you've got the back on, of course, you've got to give it a shake to make sure it works. I wanted to place the remainder of the decoration on the front of the acetate so that they weren't hidden by the shaking beads. So I've got the 2015 numbers there that were cut with the simple numbers dies from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm attaching those with dots of glossy accent, being very careful not to add too much of the glue so that it doesn't squidge out around the edges when I place it onto the acetate. One more little shake before leaving that to dry. As I want to use this shaker as an invitation, I want the back to be nice too so that I can write my message. I've added some more pattern paper and also die cut another of the clock outlines and added those to the back. And I'm gluing the handles together so that when you hold the invitation you've got a single handle to hold it by. For the rest of the sentiment, I'm going to use the Sparkle and Shine set from Simon Says Stamp. That was part of the December card kit but can also be bought separately. I want to use the Celebrate from the Let's Celebrate sentiment. You could partially ink this or do as I've done here, which is just to snip the Let's off so that you're left with the Celebrate part of the sentiment. The two pieces would fit together again easily if you wanted to stamp the sentiment as a whole again in the future. I've got a scrap piece of £120 white cardstock and the banner from the Thanksgiving feast set, and I've run that through my die cutter. I want to emboss the sentiment, so I'm going to treat the banner first with some EK Success powder tool, which will stop any embossing powder sticking where you don't want it to. This small embossing ink pad from Ranger came as part of the Simon Says Stamp December card kit, but you can buy it in a full-size pad as well. I'm stamping the sentiment onto the banner, and then I'm going to use liquid platinum embossing powder, again from Ranger. I've got a piece of scrap paper to gather any of the excess powder, and then I can use that to funnel that back into the container. Tapping on the back of the die cut does actually help remove any of the excess. And then I've had my heat tool running for a while so that it's nice and hot before bringing it to the embossing powder and letting that melt. I want the banner to be shorter than it currently is, so I've taken the banner die cut again from the Thanksgiving feast set, and I'm measuring up where I want the banner to partially cut just the end piece off. I've nestled it back into the die so that the left hand edge is sticking out, and then I'm going to use some washi tape to keep it in place before running it through my die cutter. And that gives you a banner die just the perfect size for your sentiment, and I'm going to attach that again onto the outside of the acetate using some more of the clear foam adhesive. And that completes this fun shaker invite, which I'll be using to invite some friends over to help us bring in the new year. All the supplies used today will be listed below this YouTube video and also on my blog. I wanted to thank you for joining me today. I'll leave you with some photographs, and if you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. See you next time.